At 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, Jake Morrison pulled a drowning Apache boy from Willow Creek. At 2:48 p.m., he saved a life. By Wednesday dawn, 300 Apache warriors had surrounded his ranch. What Jake didn't know was that the boy gasping for air in his arms wasn't just any child. He was the grandson of Chief Thunder Cloud, the most powerful Apache leader in 3 territories. And what happened next would change Jake's life forever. But let me tell you how one moment of human decency turned a lonely cowboy into the richest man in Arizona. Jake Morrison wasn't looking for trouble that Tuesday afternoon. Hell, he was just trying to fix a broken fence post when he heard the screaming. The sound cut through the desert air like a knife. High-pitched, desperate. The kind of sound that makes your blood run cold. He dropped his hammer and ran toward Willow Creek, his boots pounding against the hard, packed earth. The creek was usually shallow this time of year, but the spring rains had turned it into a raging torrent. That's when he saw the boy, maybe 8 years old. Apache, by the look of him, thrashing in the muddy water. The current had him, pulling him downstream toward the rocks that had claimed more than one life over the years. Jake didn't hesitate, didn't think about tribal tensions or the fact that Apache and white settlers had been at each other's throats for months. He just saw a kid who was about to die. He plunged into the creek, the icy water hitting him like a slap. The current was stronger than he'd expected, trying to drag him under too. But Jake had been a ranch hand for 20 years. His arms were strong, his grip iron. He reached the boy just as the kid went under for what might have been the last time. Jake's fingers closed around the boy's shirt, and he hauled him up out of the water. The kid was limp, unconscious, his lips blue with cold. "Come on, son," Jake muttered, dragging them both toward shore. "Don't you quit on me now." He pulled the boy onto the muddy bank and pressed his ear to the small chest. Nothing. No heartbeat, no breath. Jake had seen enough drowned animals to know what to do. He tilted the boy's head back, pinched his nose, and breathed life back into those still lungs. Once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th breath, the boy coughed up creek water and started breathing again. His eyes fluttered open, dark brown, wide with fear and confusion. When he saw Jake's face hovering over him, he tried to scramble away. "Easy there, little chief," Jake said softly. "You're safe now." The boy stared at him for a long moment, then said something in Apache that Jake couldn't understand. But the tone was clear enough. Gratitude. Jake wrapped the shivering kid in his own shirt and helped him to his feet. "Where's your family, son? How'd you end up in the creek?" The boy pointed downstream toward the Apache territory. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled a small beaded bracelet from his wrist and pressed it into Jake's hand. Before Jake could react, the boy was running toward home, moving like a deer across the desert scrub. Jake looked down at the bracelet in his palm. It was beautiful work, the kind of craftsmanship that spoke of importance, of value. But he figured it was just a kid's way of saying thanks. He had no idea it was about to change everything. That night, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. The desert seemed quieter than usual. Even the coyotes weren't howling. He sat on his porch, sipping coffee and studying the beaded bracelet in the lamplight. The patterns were intricate, telling a story he couldn't read. But there was something about it that made his skin prickle. Around midnight, his horse started acting nervous. Snorting, pawing at the ground, ears swiveling toward the darkness beyond the fence. "Easy, girl," Jake murmured, but his hand moved instinctively to the rifle propped beside his chair. The night stayed quiet. Too quiet. Jake finally went to bed around 2 a.m., but sleep didn't come easy. Every sound made him tense. Every shadow seemed to move. When dawn broke gray and cold over the mesa, Jake was already up, coffee brewing, watching the horizon through his kitchen window. That's when he saw them. At first, it was just a line of dust on the horizon. Could have been a cattle drive, or maybe wild horses. But as the sun climbed higher, the dust cloud resolved into something that made Jake's coffee cup slip from his fingers. Riders, hundreds of them. Apache warriors, painted for war, carrying lances and rifles, moving in perfect formation across the desert toward his ranch. Jake's heart hammered against his ribs. This was it. This was how he was going to die. He grabbed his Winchester and stepped onto the porch, trying to count the riders. 50. 100. More than he could count. They filled the horizon from east to west, a living wave of feathers and war paint and deadly purpose. But as they got closer, something strange happened. They weren't riding like they were coming to kill him. They were riding like they were coming to honor him. The lead rider carried not a weapon, but a staff decorated with eagle feathers. Behind him came others carrying bundles and travois loaded with goods. This wasn't a war party, it was a delegation. The riders formed a perfect circle around Jake's ranch, but they kept their distance. Respectful, waiting. Then the circle parted, and through the gap rode the most magnificent man Jake had ever seen. Chief Thundercloud himself. The chief was massive, sitting his paint horse like he'd been born there. His headdress trailed eagle feathers down his back, and his chest was covered in intricate beadwork. But it was his eyes that held Jake frozen, dark, intelligent, weighing him like a judge weighing evidence. The chief rode close enough to speak, then dismounted with fluid grace. "You are the one who saved my grandson," he said in perfect English. Jake's mouth went dry. Grandson. The boy wasn't just any Apache child. He was Chief Thundercloud's grandson. I just did what anyone would do," Jake managed. Chief Thundercloud smiled, and it transformed his entire face. Number not anyone. Many would have let him drown. Apache boy, white man's creek. Easy to walk away. The chief gestured to his warriors. But you did not walk away. You risked your life for a child who was not your blood, not your tribe. One of the younger warriors approached, leading a horse laden with bundles. At the chief's nod, he began unloading them at Jake's feet. Furs. More beautiful pelts than Jake had ever seen. Buffalo, elk, beaver. Worth a fortune in any trading post from here to San Francisco. "This is not enough," Chief Thundercloud said as more warriors brought more bundles. Beadwork, jewelry, weapons crafted with incredible skill. "Chief, this is too much. I don't need—" Thundercloud held up his hand. "My grandson is my heart outside my body. You gave me back my heart. No payment is too much." But the gifts kept coming. Silver, turquoise, sacred objects that Jake instinctively knew were priceless. "There is one more thing," the chief said finally. He whistled sharply, and from the back of the group came a warrior leading another horse. But this horse was different. It was the most beautiful animal Jake had ever seen. A pure, white stallion with intelligent eyes and a bearing that spoke of nobility. "This is Lightning Walker," the chief said. "Son of my own war horse, fastest horse in 3 territories. He is yours." Jake stared at the magnificent animal, overwhelmed. "Chief, I can't accept all this. It's too much." Thundercloud stepped closer, his expression serious. "In Apache tradition, life debt must be honored. My grandson lives because of you. These gifts, they are not payment. They are acknowledgement. You are now friend to the Apache, brother to Thundercloud." He reached into his pouch and pulled out an amulet, a turquoise eagle surrounded by silver. "Wear this. Any Apache who sees it will know you are under our protection. Your enemies will become our enemies. Your troubles will become our troubles." Jake accepted the amulet with shaking hands. "I don't know what to say." "Say you will remember," the chief replied. "Remember that sometimes a moment of kindness can bridge any distance between peoples." As the sun reached its peak, the Apache riders began to withdraw, but they left behind a changed world. Jake Morrison had woken up that morning as a poor rancher struggling to make ends meet. By noon, he was one of the wealthiest men in the territory. But more than that, he had gained something money couldn't buy: the friendship and protection of the most powerful Apache tribe in the Southwest. As Chief Thundercloud mounted his horse to leave, he turned back one last time. "The boy wants to learn to swim properly," he said with a smile. "Perhaps you could teach him?" Jake grinned. "Be honored to, Chief. And perhaps you could teach our young men about your ways, and they could teach you about ours. There is much we could learn from each other." Jake nodded, understanding what the chief was really saying. This wasn't just about gifts or gratitude. This was about building bridges, about turning enemies into allies through simple human decency. As the Apache delegation disappeared into the desert haze, Jake stood among his incredible wealth and realized the most valuable thing he'd gained wasn't gold or silver, or even the magnificent horse. It was the knowledge that sometimes, when you save a life, you don't just change that person's future, you change your own. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest miracles. Jake Morrison learned that saving one life can transform hundreds. In a world divided by fear and prejudice, one cowboy proved that humanity transcends all boundaries.